Looking at what the US is up to, China's calling on the US president to completely cancel the reciprocal tariffs, which have increased to 145%. Donald Trump has since placed exemptions on some electronic imports, such as smartphones and computers, but a separate tariff could be coming soon. For more analysis, let's bring in now political scientist and honorary professor at the University of Sydney, Simon Jackman. Simon, I want to get to that tariff issue in a moment, but first I'm keen to get your take on a developing story we're seeing this afternoon. It involves Russia wanting to base long-range aircraft in Indonesia, not too far, of course, from Darwin. We heard from our Australian leaders last hour. They're clearly quite alarmed at this prospect. I assume our US allies would be pretty unhappy about this sort of move as well.
Sure. You wonder how much they've known about this. And one of the great things, one of the annoying things, I should say, the greatly annoying things about what's going on in the US at the moment is the focus being drawn away from what right across the US would describe as their primary strategic focus, and that is the Indo-Pacific. How much bandwidth is there in Washington to track developments like this, to stay on top of them, when so much of the energy of the US political system and the conversation in Washington is inward focused at the moment, or talking about tariffs. You get these developments that are of immense importance to Australia, and of course, all roads lead back to Canberra, I think, frankly. And that's probably the position in Washington, for what it's worth, that this is in Australia's backyard, that Australia is a capable ally. We're the ones that have probably got to take the lead on this one, and hence I think the calls today from the government for a please explain from Indonesia, and indeed I think rummaging around Canberra right now, figuring out who knew what about this and who was briefed when and what sort of briefing Dutton will get, and all that is sort of going on in real time. I think it's important to point out Indonesia has long pursued a policy of non-alignment. Late last year, they did naval exercises with the Russians right before Australia and Indonesia did our largest ever joint exercise with them. So Indonesia is clearly signaling to the world that it's not picking sides at all. But the news is news, right? That there's an airbase 1,200 kilometres from Darwin, and might be setting up shop there from time to time, at least, or visiting. We don't know if they'll be permanently based or exactly what the arrangement is. I think that's the point. But long-range aircraft from there, not a welcome development from an Australian perspective on any day of the week.
No, not at all. On the tariffs, gosh, where are we up to? I mean, every day there's another headline involving tariffs. We know medicines are in Donald Trump's firing line too. We're feeling a bit nervous about that in Australia. We know the US pharmaceutical industry isn't a big fan of our PBS system in place here, but it is a wild ride that we're going on, isn't it? The whole world on this front.
Makes it a very difficult segment to prepare for. I got to tell you, for that very reason. It's very, literally day to day, almost in the same media cycle in the US overnight. Here, of course, you get one announcement and followed by another one that seems to contradict what might be happening, and semiconductors carve-outs for Apple, but no, Apple isn't being spared pain here. It's difficult to know one way or the other. I think, specific sectors now in the Australian export profile that do export into the United States, pharma among them, one of the sectors that is exposed to tariffs on the inbound. I think, we're hearing from them exactly what this might mean for them. But you're also hearing, everywhere across US media, there are stories about individual parts of the economy that are starting to wake up what it's going to mean for their businesses, everything from diamonds, everything from aviation parts coming in, and then the US then sends those back out and finished aircraft. What's that going to mean for aircraft deliveries around the world for Boeing? Diamonds. And of course, overarching it all, and back to perhaps the earlier topic we were discussing about the geopolitical story, is the rare earth story and China's retaliation there. And I think people starting to really yes, we've got specific sectors that are, in the crosshairs, but trying to zoom out and perhaps start to parse this through a broader geostrategic lens has Trump misread the global room, as it were, and China's actually sitting in a much stronger position here, given its ability to turn off the tap on rare earths before the US can rapidly establish alternate measures of supply. And of course, again, many eyes turn back to Australia if the conversation goes in that regard. So It's a very fast-moving story on a number of fronts, both very macro and geopolitical and almost capital H historical in their import through to what's happening for a given sector here and there in the export industries in the crosshairs on any given day of the week.
Yeah, we are. It's hard to keep up, as you say, but yeah, plenty of sectors here struggling to figure out what it means for us as well. Simon Jackman, always appreciate your analysis. Thanks for joining us.